Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on a new video on the channel. In the previous video we created this bit of logic here that you've seen on the screen, which we're getting full control over our normal maps, which are scrolling vertically down, where we can change the UV size, the direction, speed and rotation angle and strength. I have, however, made a couple of changes. All I've made, to start with, is added a multiply here and a multiply here by holding M on the keyboard and left click, get a multiply, add a scalar parameter, and what this scalar parameters are doing are adding individual normal strength to each of these normal maps. I've also added a third normal set. To do this, you just duplicate one of them like this, just duplicate it down, and we're going to blend it together using this blend angle corrected normals. And it just gives us a bit more variation on our normal maps. It looks okay that, but I do want a bit more randomization in it, and having a third normal map will help. And because it's the same normal map, it's not going to impede our samples or anything like that too bad. So if you followed along from the previous video, that's great. All you have to do is get rid of this bit of logic here, just delete that and get a blend angle corrected normal, right click, blend angle corrected normal there. It's an Unreal Engine function, so it's available for everyone with the engine. Just get one of them and put your new normal into the additional normal and this add node into the base normal. I've also added a multiply here with a scalar parameter for the normal strength of this texture. I've also changed the parameter names. As you can see, these are M1, N2 and then N3. You have to change the names, otherwise it won't work very well. For this normal strength I'm going to put back to 1. Like so, and we're just going to plug this up now and see what kind of reaction we're getting from our normal maps. After we've done this, I want to then work on a depth mask and set our material translucent, which we will do in a minute, and then we'll, like I say, create the depth mask, which we can use for our opacity and colour variation. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a nice bit more randomization in my normal texture for our animation. This is exactly what I want. It's not perfect, you're still getting white spots, but they're massively reduced. So it doesn't really matter, and you will hardly see that when it's translucent. Anyway, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to apply this. We'll come to our scene. What I've done here as well, I've added some rocks from a asset pack that I paid for. You can use Quixel rocks if you want from Quixel Bridge, or you can use some that the engine has. It doesn't really matter. So like I say, I've just placed them down there to work with our transparency a bit better. So yeah, it's only a couple of changes. I'm sure most of you can make them changes off your own back. So now I've added that, what I want to do is to create a material instance of our water shader master. So I'm going to right click, create material instance. I'm going to change that master name and just put test like that, because we're just testing it as it is now. We're going to select our mesh, and then I'm just going to simply drag our material on it. As you can see, it doesn't look like that. That's because our UVs and the UVs of the plane are all ski width and things like that. It doesn't matter really. We could change that shortly in the material instance. If you've come across this and applied your material instance and it's like this, which I would just simply do what I've done and just rotate it to the direction you want, like so, and then just make it fit into the gap that you need, just by rotating it around a little bit and sorting it out. Okay, so what I may do now, before we get into the depth mask, I may just quickly run through this material instance to showcase it a lot better, because that is not working right for me. So if I double click on our material instance, as you can see, I've got all my parameters here now, which were set up N1, N2, N3. What I'm going to change is our Y direction, our normal strength, our UVs, X and Y, and our speed. And I'm going to do this for each individual one. I'm actually going to change the X direction. So enable them all, apart from the rotation. We don't really need to worry about that right now. So like I said, I'm going to enable them all. I just want to spend a couple of minutes just sorting this out, so we're getting a little bit better flow that's more closer to this in our river. So now I will speed the video up towards the end after I've finished and it looks a bit better. You can always pause it and copy my parameters if needed, or just do it freehand and do the best you can do. Okay, so now I've had a play around with that. I've got this looking a little bit better. It'll certainly look better translucent. So I'm going to save my material instance. Just click off. I'm going to hit G on the keyboard to get rid of that thing. Hologram widget thingy. So yeah, I'm going to close my material instance off, come back to my master. And what I want to do now is to change our material to translucent and build the mask. So to make this translucent, what we need to do is come into the details panel here. The first thing we need to change is our blend mode. We're going to set this to translucent. As you can see, it's black. As you can see, it's greyed out our normal inpin, so we're getting no feedback into our 3D viewport. This is surely because of our lighting mode. You could enable screen space reflections, but I'm going to do that at a later date when I sort out refraction and reflections and things like that. So we're going to change our lighting mode. You have two options here. You have surface, translucent volume, and surface forward shading. They both do the same thing, but one is using the pixel shader and one is just using a translucent volume. So basically the forward shading is quite a bit more expensive, whereas the translucent volume is just a nice balance between translucent and shader usage. So I'm going to choose translucent volume. I may come to forward shading. You could always change it to that when you come to the end of your scene and you wanted to render out a good enough water river thing, volume thing going on. So I'm going to change it to translucent volume. As you can see, nice, that looks a little bit better. You could always change, you could apply used with static lighting. What this means is if you use a light in your scene, like you have a river and it's night time and you've got a guy walking over with a torch in your cinematic, the torch will be seen on the water shader. You could just enable static lighting with that. Okay, so I'm going to hit apply and have a look in our scene and let these shaders compile. That's already looking okay. Let's get back in and get this mask built. So now we've got our normal setup, looks pretty nice. Our shader is now translucent. I'm going to build this mask up for our colour and opacity. What we need first is a scene depth node. If you just type scene and then hit enter on scene depth. And what this node's going to do, it's going to grab our scene depth information from our shader based on where it is in the world. And then I'm going to also have a pixel depth node. And we're going to drag off our scene depth and just type distance. Going to get a distance node. If you move down to the bottom, it's in the utility category. Just get that distant node. And like I say, from the shader on the plane, it's going to calculate distance between our scene depth and our pixel depth on top and below our water shader. It just averages out the scene depth. You'll see a bit later on. So we're going to drag off our distance. We're going to get a component mask. because we want our calculations to be worked on the z-axis only. So that's vertically down or up like that. So we're going to get a component mask in this red, green and blue channel is basically our X, Y and Z. So we're going to do that. If I plug this into base colour now, you'll see that nothing is apparent. What I'm going to do, I'm going to release my normals from there, so I just get the white cube, and we're not getting put off with that normal texture. Okay, so what I'm expecting is a black band at the bottom of our cube here, which is not showing up, and that is simply because we have not set the parameter up yet. So I'm going to drag off here and type divide, and get a divide node in here. And then I am going to press 1 on the keyboard and left click and get a vector 1 constant. I'm just going to put in here something like 50, 80 maybe, 100. That's a bit strange. Silly me, I've not connected me divide up. So I'm just going to right click on the out pin and choose connect to base colour. Now we should see some sort of change in here. There you go. Now I've got my black band at the bottom. If I increase this, say if I put 1024, you'll see the black band is moving right up our cube, which is exactly what we're looking for. It just adds to the calculation of our depth, which is pretty cool. Okay, so as you can see, like from the whites to the blacks, it's quite a big black band, like goes white to grey then to black. I want the ability to change that, so I'm going to drag off our divide node. Just type power. Get power node, and this is going to enable us to change the fade offset. I'm going to hold 1 on the keyboard, scale the parameter, and plug that in there. If I type something like 50, 100. It needs to be small numbers with power in it, with exponent. So if I put a 1 in there, 2 in there, do you know what, guys? I fell for it again. I've not plugged the power. I've not plugged the power into the base colour. So I'm going to connect to base colour. Okay. If I increase this number, let's go back to 50. It should become a sharp line through the black and white. There you go. As you can see, that black line is moving up and down the box as I move it, and that's just the blackness of this cube is just our ground level or our mesh level, if you like. As you can see, it's staying in line with this grey plane what's on the floor here. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So we're going to reduce that. We're going to put a 5 in there, give it a bit of fade. This just enables us to have a bit of fade, as you can see there, between the white and the black. So it's not so sharp. Maybe a bit lower than that too. There you go. Apply. And now we've got them parameters sorted out. What I'm going to do, I'm going to convert these to parameters. I'm going to convert this, I'm going to put river depth. So I'm going to convert this as well to parameter. River depth fade. I'm going to reduce this default. I'm just going to put this as 80 or something. Just have it at the bottom. That's all you really need for this. Really, you don't need it halfway up. Otherwise, it'll just be all black. The plane. We don't want that. So they're the defaults. So these quite high values because of our scene depth and our pixel depth being calculated by its distance. So these are quite high, these numbers. So I need to clamp this, but we're going to use a saturate node. The saturate node's like the clamp node. I get a clamp node in. The only difference between them is this one, the saturate node, you can't change your min and max. As you can see, as standard, the clamp is a min between 0 and 1, and that's the same as the saturate node. It's a minimum between 0 and 1, but with the clamp node you can easily change that with 2 constant 1 vectors, maybe have 0 to 3 something, I don't know. But we're going to use the saturate node because we don't need to clamp. We don't need to go above 1. I'm going to connect this to our base colour now. It should stay the same, Hopefully it does. Yeah, bit of a nicer fade actually. Yeah, so cool. That's pretty much our mask setup. What we need to do now is to get a Lurping. So I'm going to hold L on the keyboard and left click, get a Lurping, put this in there, like so. I'm going to hold 3 on the keyboard, get 2 vector 3s, and these are going to be our colours. I fire this into the base colour. It should all be black now. If I change this to like blue, like so, and this one could be a red, just so we could tell the difference between the colours. I know from experience that this is the edge, so I'm going to swap these round, like so. And now our blue is the deep water, and our red is the edge. Now I'm going to change that to yellow, because I'm getting that pink band, and I don't really want that. So I'm going to open this up, get to a yellow, just like that. And now you see me get that white outline. That's what I'm looking for. So if I hit apply on this now, come to our scene, you'll see that this is looking quite nice. As you can see now, the blues are the deep water and the yellows are the edge, fading if you like, and the white is the fade in between. And that's worked out quite well. The more yellow and white that are showing, that's the transparent areas of our shader, and the blues are the deep water. As you can see, if I move that around, that transparency is quite large, and when I go down it disappears. And on the contrary to maybe other videos you've seen, that is the look I'm looking for, because when you look above water you get transparency. Well, if you're down here like this, you don't see much transparency, just bits around the edge. So yeah, cool. So I'm going to save this quickly. So what we're going to do, we're going to duplicate this lerp like so, and we're going to use the same mask for our opacity. So if I come in here and hold S, I know what these are going to be called already. So I'm going to, in this first one, I'm going to put river, edge, edge, opacity. Right, so we'll fire this into the top one. We'll duplicate this. And then we're going to get rid of the edge side and put deep. So in this one, I'm going to do a default of 1 and a default of 1 in there, so we get full opacity. I'm going to right click on here and connect to opacity. As you can see, nothing has changed, but if I lower this to say 0.3, you'll see now that yellow at the bottom is disappearing. If I lower this to 0.2, you can see now we can see straight through our cube. And that is exactly what I am looking for. Okay, so I'm going to set these back to 1. I'm going to hit apply, and then we're going to come to our scene. Let these shaders compile, and there we go. We're going to open our material instance now. Right, so, oh dear. Oh no, that's right. If I come back here, sorry about this guys, I just need to change these to parameters. So I'm going to convert this and put river, edge, colour. That's the way I spell colour. River, depth, colour. Like so. Okay, we're going to hit apply there, so we can get these in our material instance. We'll drag this out like so. Let our shaders compile. I'm gonna keep the colours like this just for now, just while we test these parameters out. So I've got a river depth opacity. We know if I put that 0, all the blue should disappear. Put it to 1, comes back. So if I put this to a 0.97, then we're getting a slight bit of transparency in our blue, as you can see right there. I move it around there a bit. you can see through the blue here that we're seeing that rock, which is great. For our river edge opacity, I'm going to put 0.93. Just make this a little bit more transparent. It'll be a little bit more harder to see because it's bright yellow right there. But also we can change the river depth. If we reduce this to 20, you'll see that the amount of edging has gone. But if we increase this to 100, we get a lot more depth. We don't want that, we want 50, I'd say. Maybe 45. Yeah, that seems about nice. Like so. Yeah, that's quite nice. Our depth fade, this is the fade between there. If I put a 0 in here, it completely goes 1, 2, you'll see that yellow is building up over that white. 5, 50, there. And now it's a sharp line. What I want in here, maybe 15. 15, maybe 20. No, sorry, wrong way. Maybe 10. That's a nice nice bit of fade. I'm going to reduce that even more actually. Just bring that down. I've got a nice bit of fade there. I go to the edge opacity, put 0. Still getting a nice bit because that fading parameter. It's great. Okay, so we'll put 0.8. That transparency on there. Okay, I'll not change the colour just yet. What I want to do is add another bit of logic in here to help us with that edging transparency. I'm going to move the colour up here, comment it, river colour. So, and this can be our opacity. So, this is our mask. Pardon me. Depth. Mask. Okay, like I was saying, I want to add a bit more logic in here to help with the blending of these edges. What we're going to use, we're going to right click and get a depth fade node. There you go, it's in depth. Get the depth fade node and bring that in here. So we're going to hold M on the keyboard and left click, get a multiply node in here. What I'm going to do here, because I need these two wires into this multiply here, so I'm going to hold left control down, left click and hold, and just drag that into the out pin of the multiply. Plug that in there, and the depth fade in there. Cool. I'm going to right click on the opacity, promote to parameter, and call this depth fade opacity. I'm going to copy this, the depth fade side. I'm going to right click on fade distance, and then I'm just going to get rid of the fade, or depth fade distance, like so. If we click on our depth fade node, you'll see it still showcases the defaults. So we're going to put these into our, this is 100, into our parameters as default. And this was a 1. And we're going to hit apply. Now we should get some more options up here in which we can play with to get a proper decent fade, if you like. Okay, so if I reduce our depth fade distance, look at that change it's making. That white, the fade is the white bit, which is great. We've now got control of how much white is showing. And then you get the fade, depth fade opacity. If I lower this, you'll see the changes it can make here. But the depth fade opacity, you want to be careful with that. My advice would be just to leave it at 1, and you could change the river depth. It helps, like so. As you can see, that river depth is moving the actual transparency of the edge water, and then the depth fade opacity is moving the actual fading, which is great. Exactly what I want, and the distance there is the amount of that white that you want showing. Cool, and there's our depth opacity. You can see it coming through there. I'm going to leave that at a relatively high number, so we can just see through here now. And our edge opacity, if we reduce this right down, you can see we can see through that yellow. Okay, so that mask is working clearly. We've got some decent parameters to affect our transparency. If I reduce that edge in transparency a bit more, bring our distance up and bring our depth up a little bit. There you go. That looks about nice. What I want to do now is to change our colour. What I'm going to start with is just a sheer black. There. Okay. Around the edge, I'm going to go for a blue, like so. I'm going to send this a little bit more down. You may be thinking, wow, these are crazy colours. But it's kind of, we'll set this so it's more of a grey colour. Seems okay. In England, where I'm from, these are pretty much what the rivers look like. I'm going to come back to my master. It's all set up and ready to rock. What I need to do now is connect this to our normal. I'm going to right click on the result and connect to normal. Now we should get a nice result. Just let the shaders compile. There we go. It's quite the nice result I was looking for. I'm going to reduce this down a bit, make it a little bit darker. Or maybe I'm going to keep that where it was and just set the black up a little bit more. Oh, a bit too much. Maybe a little bit more black. That's it. That'll do. Okay, cool. So we can change our fade distance. So let's reduce this back here. So. And now the mask is all set up. We've got our opacity set up, our depth mask, we've got 3 normals and our river colour. And now what it's about is just playing with these parameters that we've set up in this tutorial and finding the right kind of parameters that you want to use on your particular scene, or what your artists want to use. But yeah, quite happy with that. It's a bit murky and browny. We're going to decrease that brightness there a little bit more. Press OK. I'm going to reduce this a little bit more, like so. Okay. Okay, so as it stands, that's exactly what I wanted to do in this video. In the next video, what I want to do is to give us some refraction, some reflection, and add some metallic and roughness, and just adding bits and bobs in here and making it look a little bit better. We're going to be adding fake specular and all this good stuff, and to make it look a little bit nicer. At the moment we've got our river with some transparency. We can see in the rock here, as you can see, this is our plane line. We can see the rocks under the water, which is exactly what we was looking for. So yeah, if you found this useful and you've got yourself a decent river shader coming up, then please consider subscribing and liking the videos. It really does go a long way to boosting me to do more of these videos. So I'll see you later in the next video. Thank you. Bye.